Woohoo!
I'm here.
Okay, so I guess we could start with introductions. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I'm Jeff Erickson. I'm a fifth grade math teacher at Nobel Elementary School.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Melanette Ellison, and I'm a third grade math teacher as well as middle school math lab teacher at Wentworth Elementary School.
Okay. I am Tracy Walker Hines. I am a fourth and fifth grade science teacher at Robert Fulton Elementary School.
Hi, I'm Tracy Imartino. I'm a 7th and 8th grade science teacher at Bridge Elementary School.
I forgot to add, I'm also teaching 7th grade algebra after school.
Oh,
nice.
Nice. That's great. All right. So, we've done our introductions. Should we get, somebody want to give like maybe a 2 or 3 sentence summary of our 2 books? I guess we need to talk about what the 2 books are. Some of us read, huh?
Do we want to pick a moderator and a facilitator first?
Sure, that's fine. Who wants to moderate?
I thought I saw an email just now.
I suggested you, Tracy.
Okay.
Yeah, because you read the book first, so I think you. And did you read it again, by the way?
I skimmed. I read parts of it, and then I also read on Looking. So I read the 2.
I only got to Countdown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay. Well, Mela, did you just do Countdown too?
Countdown. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, then we'll focus on Countdown. Then that's fine. So
What do I see? Oh, your cover's different than mine. Because this is mine. Let me see yours again, Melanette.
I guess mine is probably older.
I got the one with the T-shirt also. Tracy with an E. You're
Yes.
kind of not in the middle of the. You're like half a
Okay.
little bit more.
You know what? I slid in the chair. Let me adjust the chair a little bit.
That's better.
Okay, now you have all of me.
Okay, there's my book cover.
Yes. Okay, someone wants to say hi, and then she has to go do something. Say hi. That's Peyton, everybody.
hello.
Peyton, I'm on with people from my class. We're doing a homework assignment, okay? Can Pearson help you until I get done? Thank you. Okay.
That's great.
Tracy, just let me say, it was a really good suggestion for the book, especially on, since we're focusing on problem-based learning. I was surprised a little bit. My expectations were that they were going to talk about the competition, but then they went into why are people good at problem solving and why aren't they? Mm-hmm. And they go through so many. Each chapter goes through like a different explanation, and all they do is provoke your thoughts on. Well, is it because they're nurtured? Is it by nature? Is it by how they approach problems? And it's just so cool that there's really no definitive answer, and to try and teach people how to problem solve is just such a combination of a million things.
Right. So I think we should probably talk about what the book is first, so people who are listening kind of know what this book's about, and then we can get into the problem solving and so on. What do you guys think?
All right.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So who wants to give a quick summary of the book?
So, Countdown, I could give a version and someone can add to it if you would like to add to it. It was about a man that followed 6 kids through a tough math competition, and he was on a search to find out exactly what Eric was just saying, how do we create, or how our geniuses, how our mathematicians made what goes into them becoming so successful in math.
And it just also provided a lot of background, I think, about what goes into the competition. I like the personal aspect of some of the different participants, some of the coaches. It gave you a lot of insight as to, if you will, what makes up a mathematician.
Okay. Jeff, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I agree. I thought the whole background of the whole competition, and then the background of the people, and the focus of the book was a lot different than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it would be more about like this nail-biting competition instead of a discussion about, and I'm glad it was more of a discussion about how why these people excelled at solving problems and the questions about it.
Okay. Anybody else? I agree with all of you. I feel like it also talked a little bit about just mathematics education in the United States, and it gave me some pause for thought as to how we approach mathematics education and how people from other countries, when they come into the United States, how they change a little bit. There was a little bit I want to get into further on in our discussion about just the education of math and how we do it in the United States compared to other countries.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think that was our summary of the book. One of the first questions that we need to talk about is a passage or a quote that struck with you or stuck with you. And I'll just go ahead and start this one. One of the things.
Can I ask a question, Tracy?
What?
Can I ask a question? Are we going to leave time for you to share the other book that we didn't get a chance to?
I can. Why don't we do that at the end? Does that sound okay with everybody?
That's what I said. Can we leave some time at the end? So I'll give like a 10-minute warning when it's 10 minutes left, and then you can share.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Okay, so I think the one thing that I wanted to, it was in the direction chapter, and the one thing that kind of stuck with me too, but this one really is not all students will learn the same thing from a lesson. Those who are interested in and talented in math will achieve a different level of proficiency from their classmates. But they will learn more by having to struggle with the problem than by being force-fed a simple, pre-digested procedure. And I think that that's really stuck with me because we want to have this easy solution. And it really, when we think to ourselves, and my daughter does this, I've got 20 problems, I need to finish them, and there's only one right answer. And yeah, there is a numerical answer, but there's more than one way to go about it sometimes. And I thought that kind of stuck with me. There was a quote that I found at a math PD a couple of years ago that I can't remember the guy who said it, but he said that any math problem that takes less than 24 hours to solve is not a problem. And I was like, oh, but it was interesting. So that's one of the things that struck with me. So.
Can I piggyback off that a little bit?
Sure.
When I was reading, as I was finishing the book, and I was reading about the scoring and how they scored, I can't think of this kid's name, but he didn't finish the problem, but he took such a different approach to it, and they were so impressed with him. They couldn't give him the perfect 7, but they had a lot of debate on how to score him. And I thought that was interesting, that even though he didn't finish, they were fighting to give him points because of his innovative approach, which goes back to what you were saying, Tracy, that, again, there's more than one way to, as I always like to tell my kids, there's more than one way to skin a cat. You know, what you do comes from your experiences, and that's perfectly okay. But I need you to come up with some sort of an answer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can I respond to you both?
Mhm.
So as we move to implementing things in our classrooms, and we're trying to make our class more STEM enriched, and we have, of course, the math talks, which is supposed to be one question where you go into depth and you're discussing it. But my problem with the math talks is the time constraint, because they want to limit you to only 5 to 10 minutes. But if it's a really good question, yeah, we're going to really talk about and discuss, we always go over the 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like finding the balance of finding a question that has so much to it that it can be discussed for a while, but the balance of we're still under a time constraint in the classroom with how much time can we give to just one question.
Right.
But we
Right.
definitely need it, because we love the math talks. My kids love it. We always go over time, because that makes a good question will demand several approaches,
Mhm.
multiple views. So even with this competition, they one round, I think they said 3 questions. That's out 3 questions over 4 days. And my kids now couldn't imagine doing only 3 questions within 4 days. But
Right.
that's that.
But that
Let me,
goes to that. I'm sorry, Jeff. The constraints we have with pacing, and you're not on pace, and you're behind. And we don't look at. I think administrators don't always look at why we're behind, because when you get into those rich discussions, you want to throw your pacing calendar out the window. You want to give the kids a chance to show what they know and express and learn and grow from each other. And we're very inhibited by that.
Right. Jeff, you want to go ahead and say
yeah,
what?
I'm going to relate to kind of what Mel said and try and bring it back to my impression of the book. I do the math talk
I'm sorry,
also.
Jeff. Jeff, could you tilt your phone a little bit so I can see? There you go.
I'm sorry.
No,
Um,
sorry.
so I think that I do the math talks also, but I let the kids run them a lot of the times. And it's amazing. Most of the kids in the class, if you don't call on them, or if somebody gets the right answer, they moan and groan. Like they go, oh, darn, I wanted to answer that. But then they think of these really wild ways to solve it because they still want to be heard. If I'm adding 2 plus 2, somebody will say, well, I broke it down into 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, just so that they had a different approach and they could talk about it. The curriculum we're using is problem-based. It's based on problems. And right after we do number talk, they do what's called a solve and share, which is a problem of what I'm going to teach them that day. So they have a chance to explore the concept before I teach it. And it's really interesting how they come up with answers and what they think. And it brings back to the book on how do I find out what makes a good problem solver. And the book discusses a lot of different strategies and a lot of different backgrounds. And again, there's no definitive answer that people can find on why some people are better at problem solving than others. And that's what intrigues me. And that's what intrigues me about trying to teach problem solving to students at the 5th grade level and the 7th grade level, is how do you teach problem solving when there's no definitive step-by-step approach on how anybody looks at a problem. Everybody looks
Okay.
So
Okay.
maybe a good problem solver is created from a good instructor that provides good questions that allows them to explore. It's all in a question then.
I
Yeah.
think I think that's a really good point. And our focused targeted instruction this quarter was on good discussion and the questions and the talk moves that you can make to bring together that discussion. As a whole school, we're working on building academic discussions.
Talk moves will build better problem solvers, definitely.
And the book, excuse me, references um, the students or one of the coaches using a book on problem solving. I'm looking for the title. I don't know if it mentioned the title. I'm trying to go back and see. But there are books, it looks like, on problem solving.
Yes.
And I tweeted out a couple of pictures of some books that I started looking for based on a reference the book made also about problem solving for kids. Again, I go back to my being a mother, and with a kindergarten child, I think it's very exciting now for her to be starting school. Get off the couch, kindergarten child. For her to be starting school at this time, as we're kind of in a different place with education in terms of these Common Core tests. And so I'm fortunate that my kids are young enough that they're starting learning Common Core instead of being in 7th and 8th grade and just now getting exposed to this change in thinking. So some of the books that I saw, I'm going to have to go out and look for my kids to make sure that they are able to become more problem solvers. And I see that in my daughter more than I think in my son being a strong problem solver. He's stronger in literature, but she seems to be a stronger math student. So
And
I thought that was
unusual from the book, because the book says that boys, research says, not just the book,
right.
the book refers to the research done that boys are better at math conceptually than girls. And I have a daughter and a son, and my son is better at math, even though he's only 6 and she's 9. He really understands it. Like, it's not rote memorization. And I see it, and the explanation that the book gave is saying boys usually, and it's a connection with athletes as well, because boys and their athletic ability to measure the distance, to throw the ball, to move it, they have a better spatial concept than girls, and that's why boys tend to be better, but boys are usually better at math, even in my classroom. So when the book said that, me being a female math teacher, I was a little offended, but I think it's true. There are, the boys usually tend to be stronger in math.
That's interesting. I remember that part of the book, and what I find is when you start looking at the numbers of students that are going into college, though, I find that there's the research says that boys are better at math, but then when you start looking at who's entering college, they're seeing more and more, the statistics are showing that more and more females are applying to college than men, females versus males. And I'm wondering, well, where's the disconnect, or where's that, is there a disillusionment? I don't know, and I think that that's a conversation for another time. But one of the things that I do find interesting, and I can't remember where it was in the book, but there was an immigrant, a male, I think it was the male, and was talking about how when he was in his country, when he came to the United States, his math ability was really high, but then, and maybe it was just in general, but then that as they become more and more and more into the United States education system, their math ability actually goes down. And I don't know, do you guys remember reading about that?
I don't remember you have to refresh the chapter, and then
I know I'd have to look it back up. But I remember reading that. It was just like one page. But that really struck me, too. It was just like, well, if the research says that these children are really, really good at math, that these males are really, really good at math, then why aren't we seeing this through, like, all the way to college? I don't know.
But I picked up on that picked up on how we instruct our students, in that, we talk about elementary education, and a lot of us have to teach everything, I'm fortunate in that the past, I think, 5 years, I've always been in a departmentalized setting where I've had to teach social studies as well, but for the most part, I can focus on science. But
Mhm.
so many people have to teach all the subjects. So
Right.
you become a jack of all trades, master of none, whereas I believe they said in China, the teachers only focus on one subject, so they have a better grasp of the concept to be able to be better teachers, so that their students are actually better students.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think the whole gender issue, I think that was a little culturally motivated, and how times changed the perception of girls, that boys did better in math, and boys should be engineers, and boys should be doctors, and boys should be, and I think that's changing, and I think you see the results of that change in the college admissions, that
Yes.
there's more girls going to college. So I think some of it was culturally, and in the book they were exploring that, but they still couldn't explain why boys were better. So that was kind of interesting. So I don't forget, Tracy, you were talking about different books. In Countdown, they mentioned a book called The Art and Craft of Problem Solving by
That was it.
Okay.
Ceitz, that
Okay.
I am putting on order. So
All right. I think we need to move on to a different question so we can get all of these in here. So we talked about does anybody else have another passage or quote that struck you or anything like that?
I do want to refer to page 97. There's a paragraph about competition, competitiveness, because even in
Mm-hmm.
athletic sports, it's a big thing about do parents go too far putting their kids in all of these competitions, and the kids can't handle the stress and losing and failures, and they even have a commercial out right now. I think it's also to somebody where they gave everybody a participation trophy just to help with kids being able to accept when they're not as good as their peers. So on this paragraph, it says, when someone performs well under difficult circumstances, talking about, pressures of competition,
Mm-hmm.
we can admire that person for his skill and pluck. When someone performs well under intense competitive pressure, when the eyes of the world are focused on that person's every action, and our admiration turns into something closer to awe. And perhaps that's the greatest argument in favor of competition. It can produce moments not only of great achievement, but also of great beauty. So it's saying, why do some people continue to create the competitions and provide them? Because it creates an awe, like, man, that's awesome to see these kids be able to perform in this setting. So it's beautiful.
But I think as teachers, just as on a side note, we have to teach children those, I think those personality, character education skills along with the competitiveness. Because I like to use healthy competition, but I think competition in isolation without showing that, no, we don't want to just beat somebody, but we want to push someone and help them come along. Because I tell my class all the time, if one person doesn't get it, we're not successful. Everybody has to achieve for us to consider ourselves a successful team, a successful group, and help them learn that it's not just about me, it's about us totally. And so that's one of the things I hope that the students get out of these competitions. They get individual and team medals, which helps them to get that concept. But we as teachers have to really push that.
I agree, but I also think too that when we have these big competitions, and this is another reason why I really liked the book, um, it's not just that one day that you're winning. It's not that one day when you're on the podium with that trophy. All of the work that goes into it, and Mel, to kind of tie into this paragraph, one of the chapters was, I think, on talent and practice, and the amount of time that these children, these amazing, amazing children, went into just working on it. And somebody mentioned how they spent 4 days on 3 problems. The amount of practice, the amount of those types of characteristics, those need to be celebrated, and I think that they need to be told too. And I think that goes into what Tracy said with the character education point. It's tenacity, it's perseverance, it's going back and reflecting, okay, here's my problem, here's how I solved it, how can I make it better? And, I feel like that ties into that whole idea of healthy competition as well, because then when you do see that great beauty, you're acutely aware that that beauty is not just that one day, but it is months, years of practice.
Good point.
Jeff? What do you think?
You are giving us all a lot of food for thought, as the book did, and I think that was the whole purpose of the book. For me, it really brought up just a lot of different things that I think are going to influence my teaching. For the fact that people, they do need practice in problem solving, and we need to teach them the skills of problem solving. We need to approach our students so that they look at the world and problems in the world, that not only the math part of it, but the problems that they can create from the math part of it. Like I have my students right now, I had them make a list of anything to do with tree. So they came up with problems like how much oxygen does a tree produce? There's a math problem. How much water does a tree require? What's the biggest tree in the world? How many coconut palm trees are there? So I just let them go, and they came up with like hundreds of math questions about the simplest thing, like a tree.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So Tracy, what struck with you? What passage or?
I think the thing that struck me the most was a quote on page 103 about talent, because we always talk about our gifted and talented students, and so I was very intrigued. I've always been intrigued by, is it nature versus nurture? And again, no answers from the book, but a lot of thoughts. So what stuck out to me was when adults say they see talent in a child, they may actually be seeing a child who has matured earlier than others, either physically or mentally. How and other psychologists have said, or the child may simply find a task more interesting or may have had some previous exposure to it. Whatever the reason, as soon as the child is labeled as talented, the prediction becomes self-fulfilling. That child is given extra attention, so he or she draws farther ahead than the pack. So, I mean, so there seems to be a little bit of nature, but a whole lot of nurture that goes into making that child have the ability to be so successful. So again, no question has been answered, but just a lot of thought. What are we doing when we see a child that shows propensity in a specific area? How do we encourage them? What do we do with them? As I talk about buying these math books for my daughter that I'm thinking has a little bit of math skill, So I'm about to really, really nurture her and see how far we get with her.
Can I add to that the question about nature and nurture on the same page? It says that, in fact, most people can achieve at very high levels. And that's hopeful for us as teachers and parents, as well as we look at students and you might think, oh, they're behind, or how are we going to get them up to par? And sometimes, I don't want to say it, but sometimes it seems like not hopeless, but that we have a big journey ahead of us. But this psychologist says that most kids can achieve at high levels if they are willing to put in what Tracy said, the time, the months, the years. When they put in this time, when they invest in the necessary time and energy, they will perform. So it is about what you put into it. I think nurture play is playing is showing being a stronger contributive factor than nature.
I always with my kids, I always refer to everything in life. The more effort you put into it, and math is practice, practice, practice. I tell them Michael Jordan did not become a basketball star by not practicing. He used to do
Mhm.
1,000 shots a day.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He didn't make a high school freshman team, and that motivated him to practice, practice, practice. Musicians, the same way. Singers, anybody who excels or is at the top of their game, they have to practice. And math and science are the same thing. You have
Exactly.
exposure,
Exactly.
and you
There's
have to read
So, yeah. So, but there's a quote. One of my principals told it to me. When you see an overnight success, like if you know somebody who's quote an overnight success, that's 15 years of work. But nobody noticed it until they got to a certain level.
Mhm.
And that ties into what you guys just talked about with the competitive. You know, people achieve at high levels because they put that time into it, and you know they have that. I don't even know if it's an interior or an exterior motivation, but I think it also ties into this idea of if you lose a competition, that's not that's okay. It's okay to not place, and it's okay that you weren't the first one. What have you learned from it, and what are you going to do next time? Right now we're in the middle of science fair, and I've got all of my students that are just like, I really want to do the science fair. I really want to do the science fair. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's great. Here's what you need to do. And then when they don't, either they don't do it or they don't meet whatever standard is set, they're devastated. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Let's look at what you've learned. Let's look at what you've learned and how you are as a person. You're a better person for doing X, Y, Z. But they can't see that. And I don't. I struggle with, well, how do I teach that to my students that it's okay to not be number one?
Mhm.
Art.
Yeah, I agree, Tracy. As a science teacher with the science fair, I always have kids one saying, I want to win, I'm going to win. And I always tell them we're all winners because let's talk about, and I end up doing exit interviews with every group or every project to say, okay, this is what happened, talk about what went wrong, what can you do next time? We can take the same project, the same activity, and do it again next year, and you're going to see a difference. And
Right.
so that's one of the things that I use with them so that they don't get discouraged because it's always I got to be number one, I got to beat, I got to win. No, we all got to learn, and if we learn, then we're all winners.
Right. Right. Okay. Who else has a passage? So we've heard from Tracy. Jeff, what type of passage did you have that struck with you?
I didn't have a specific passage that I focused in on. I was just, while I was reading the book, I was so intrigued by all the, like, just so many things that, the nature versus nurture, the male versus female, and just all those discussions and all those things that he brought up that I did not come up with a specific quote that struck me, but I was looking at the overall on what struck me overall, and it was just, again, how the question is, why are some people better problem solvers than others? And it's such a combination of 1,000 things that it's really hard to pinpoint. So a specific quote you guys gave were awesome. I guess I'm more of an overall type picture
Okay.
of what the book's trying to tell me.
Well, I think that's a great way to end this question. I think that's a great way to end this question and move on. So, what about, we've got this surprises and contradict current understanding. So what surprised you? I guess we'll tie this. You can choose one or you can do both. So what surprised you or what contradicted your current understanding? Who wants to start?
I think I will. Um, what kind of slapped me in the face was there was a little quote on creativity, and it wasn't an exact quote, but they talked about how creativity comes from exposure. Again, to me, I think of myself as a non-creative person because I think I thought, and I have to change it. I'm putting it on the shelf for now. Creativity again is a nature thing, but it's not necessarily nature. It could be nurturing too, and what you're exposed to, and what you see, and what you read, and that helps, to spark those juices and give you ideas. Hello, Kitty.
I know. Yeah, just walked right in.
I think the thing that really surprised me was that the statistics that backed up that male students or male are better problem solvers, boys are better problem solvers than girls. That really stuck to me, that there's actually statistical evidence to that fact, when in fact in my classroom I never thought about it before. And now after I read the book, I did start to notice things like that. And what I think that prompts me to do is to make sure that every student has access to the same type of skills.
True. Very true. Interesting. That's interesting. Anybody want to respond to Tracy or Jeff while my cat is driving me crazy? Let's see. Anybody want to? Mel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm thinking, so when we say that all students have the potential to achieve at high levels, and as educators, we need to provide them with the opportunities, with the questions that provide them the provokefulness that they need. But the dilemma is in the book, when these kids are 11, 12 years old and they're 13 and they can take a college exam, it's like, do you stifle them by keeping them in middle school and high school, or should they go on to college? And they had a few kids that did just test out and go straight on, but because we want to make sure we're allowing them the learning at their levels, but are they socially ready for that level? And so it's kind of like a dilemma, because we want to give them what they need academically, but it may not be what they need yet socially. But we don't want them to become too bored in high school or elementary school, where they become, I know Tracy was saying girls are going to enrolling in college more. Well, just because girls are enrolling more doesn't mean that boys are not better in math. They might be bored, and just the dropout rate for boys, not for boys, the dropout rate for gifted kids, I read in a study before, is just as high as the dropout rate for diverse learners, because school is not interesting to them. So it's kind of making that decision. How do I give them what they need so that they are still interested, where they don't have to be placed in an environment that they're not ready for on any other level besides academics?
I don't think that we, as a school district or in general across the country, I think we unfortunately are more focused on the ones who are behind at grade level.
Exactly.
And the kids who need the enrichment suffer more because there aren't necessarily the programs that we have, like for diverse learners, and we're always being told to focus on the kids who are below grade level and focus on helping them, and in the classroom we focus on the behavioral problems because they're the ones who are disturbing the classroom, and yet the kids who need the enrichment, I don't think I'm doing a good job or the schools are doing a good job to make those programs available and to take those kids and help them as much as they help the diverse learners and those below grade level.
Exactly. Every year when we look at our school data, that's the group that doesn't move as much, is the higher performing students. Again, because we're trying to move that last tier up. But we could gain, and just from a statistical standpoint, we could gain so much more growth moving those higher level students. But we don't have the financial or the bodies to do that. Our school system doesn't provide us those opportunities. Sitting in a meeting at my daughter's school, she attends Leonard, a gifted school. They lost so much money.
Right.
They lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they have aids for diverse learners when maybe they should have aids for those who are way above grade level.
They're diverse learners too. I mean, they fit in that category, but yet and still we're only able.
They get ignored.
Right.
Right, and I think you guys have brought up a really good point, and I feel like we're talking about something that really we can't solve right now, because you brought up money, and you brought up basically politics, because we focus on our lower tier, our tier 3 students, or students that are at that lowest rung, because if we don't, our school gets closed. And the politicians continue to talk about how terrible we are. And unfortunately, we can't change that right now. But all of these points are really good. And I feel like those are, in a way, those kind of tie into what we talked about as well with this time constraints. We want to do the math talks. We want the kids to explore. We want the kids to have that sense of wonder. There was a whole chapter on a sense of wonder. And I feel like we're being pulled in 2 different directions, and we're being told 2 different things. You as a teacher have to create that sense of wonder and do those problem-solving skills and do that problem of the month and do those math talks, and in science, do those labs where they're constructing their own procedures. But in the same time, you can only do it in 300 minutes a week, and it still has to be tied to a Pearson test that is going to show whether or not you were a good teacher. And they're 2 different things. You can't have problem solving and then say, okay, well, we're going to give you a standardized test, because half the time the standardized test doesn't match the problem-solving skills that you wanted us to teach in the first place. So
And don't even give me WEA, which is not problem.
Right.
Yeah.
It's content.
Yeah.
You know, average.
Right. So one of the things that we're going to move things along.
Yeah, we want to try to wrap it up.
Yeah, well, we still need to talk about our main takeaways, our implications for teaching and learning, and personal learning. So
I feel that we've already discussed our main takeaways when we did our quotes, and we've been saying, teaching, how we're going to apply it in our classrooms as we reflect. Throughout the whole conversation, we've been discussing how we're going to put it in the classroom as teachers, how we have to look at things differently. But
yeah, I really think we addressed those when we were discussing other things of what we're bringing back to the classroom, what our strengths are, what we need to do. We've mentioned, math talks. You guys have mentioned science fair. I think we've already weaved all that into our conversation, as opposed to specifically saying, okay, now this is what I'm going to bring into the classroom.
Okay. I do want to add one more thing, and this kind of ties into the personal learning. And this, we're all, how can I put this? I take away from this not only as a teacher, but I take it away from as a parent. And I know Tracy said this at the beginning, but also as a parent and as an adult. And one of the things that we talked about, this whole book was talking a lot about exposure too. And I just feel like as a parent, trying to expose my child to so many different things, it's an overwhelming task. I mean, this book made me feel, as well as it brought up all of these great ideas, it also made me feel kind of as a cruddy parent and a cruddy teacher too, like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this. Oh my gosh, I'm not doing this. Oh my gosh, I'm not doing this.
I got a lot to learn to be a better teacher. Thank you for bringing it up.
And I think to myself, it's almost like a competition within myself. How can I be that better person? How can I be that better parent, how can I be that better teacher? And I think it talks into, and I'm going to tie into our improv. You know, I tend to say, oh, I only got 10 minutes left, so I'm trying to get that kid to say what needs to be said, but maybe I do need to say more yes and. What do you think? And yes and what do you feel about this solution? How can we make it better? What if we tried this aspect of the procedure, and what if we changed this variable? So I don't know. I guess that's my big personal takeaway is incorporating what came from this book and just what we've been doing in STEM in general. Just the yes and that sense of wonder and all the things that we're learning. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
You said that beautifully.
Yeah, you did. Has anyone read the Tiger Mother book? I think it's Confessions of a Tiger Mother.
No, I have not.
Yeah, that'll really make you feel like a failure as a parent. Not this.
I mean, I'm not reading it.
They make a little bit of reference to the same kind of concepts as they talk about how we as American parents say, oh, pretty much you got to see good job. Whereas in the Asian culture, the parents don't want anything less than an A. They instill in their children, you have to work to be successful, and successful is an A because you're representing not only yourself, your family, but your whole entire culture. So the book alludes to that we as Americans settle for mediocrity, and that's also part of our problem. And so as a parent, I ask myself, what am I settling for? My son got a C in math, a D in math, I'm sorry, and he was like a half a point away from a C. And so I found myself saying, okay, well, he was that close to a C, and I know he did okay, and I was torn with, do I push him more? What do I do? And it just really, reading this again just brought all that up for me.
Yeah. One last thing before we move on. I thought now it just lost. Oh, I know. I thought with this book, and they were talking about those 3 questions, I would really like to have an interview or an essay about the people who made up these questions. Why did they use, what was their thought process in coming up with these 3 questions? I just thought it would be kind of interesting to say, okay, well, what's your rationale by choosing these 3 questions? How did you come up with it? And why did you find them to be more worthy than others? So that's what I thought.
Well, I think we need to wrap it up because we've been on for about an hour. We could talk all day.
It was a good book. I enjoyed the book, Tracy. Thank you for your recommendation.
Oh, well, I've got plenty of recommendations. Let me tell you.
Write them down and send me a memo.
Well, I will send everyone the link on how you can view this on YouTube.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I got another question. Are we supposed to edit it too? Like, are we supposed to take out certain things, or are we just supposed to put it up there raw?
We just.
I say go raw.
They said do an introduction. Like you're going to put it up in Deep Play Group. The introduction would be, we read the book Countdown, which talked about this basically, and that was what our discussion was. And our focus is problem-based learning.
Okay. All right.
Kind of a background, like I would say 3 or 4 sentences max. That's what I read, I thought.
Okay.
And did you also? Oh, we're still live, so.
Let me stop, Brock.